What's up, y'all? It's Ben with Country Central. It's a big honor of mine to have one of my favorite artists in town on today. It's Ray Fulcher. He's been part of some of the biggest hits of the past 10 years in country music. When It Rains, It Pours, Luke Combs, Does to Me. We can go on and on with everything Ray's been involved in, but, really excited to have you on, man. How are you doing?
Man, I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on here. Love what y'all do. Y'all are killing it too in your own right in that part of the industry. So, yeah, it's an honor to be on here. Thank you.
Yeah, man. If anything, I'm just super curious because we've talked to a couple people in town. A lot of people, ironically, from Georgia have been on our
Yeah,
podcast. We chat with Farrah and Rachel's, we chat with Jordan Rowe, and they've all told us their kind of unique story again in Nashville. And everybody's experience is different. And I've read a lot about yours because I think I was working in radio in Houston when It Rains It Pours was like blowing up at radio, and I'm just the
right.
guy looking up the liner notes, and I would see Ray Fulcher on like every song on that first Luke Combs
Oh,
album.
yeah,
And I'm just super
yeah,
curious, man. Like, how did you get your start in Nashville? Just tell us a little bit about your story again here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I'll just kind of start from the beginning if you want.
Please.
You know, I was going to school at the University of Georgia, and I loved country music growing up. I mean, George Strait, Alan Jackson, Keith Whitley, like go down the line, but those are kind of the top three that come to mind. But I never played music. I'm not from necessarily a musical family, but I just love the way the songs made me feel. I love the way that they this first thing I want to do after baseball or football practice is like jam on the way home and stuff. And that carried over to college. And I was like always the guy, with I would take I was the guy that was turning on country music at your party when you probably didn't want him to, but that was always me. And so, uh, yeah, and from there, I still didn't think like because I worked for the football team at Georgia. I actually was a I worked with the quarterbacks and I worked under Coach Bobo
I heard the
there. Did some
story how you
manager
got
stuff.
that job interview. Like, so just the same way you kind of hit up Nashville. It sounds like you
Oh, I
just
mean,
go for it in your life.
I just walked. Yeah, well, just touching that on that quickly. Yeah, I just walked in the football office one day and was like, "Hey, I want a job. Is there anything here?" And then just so happened they had a recent opening at this like lower level kind of student manager position, and that's kind of where I started. But for me, it all changed towards it all kind of pivoted towards music. I went to Georgia Theater one night and saw Eric Church play for the first time, and I actually didn't know much about him at all at the time. He was when Sinners Like Me was just out, but I hadn't really got to the stage where I was like digging in a new artist. I was just turning up the radio and listening to what was on the radio and stuff. And he just had his first single out, but man, that show was so incredible. He played a song called Lightning, and I just remember that was the moment where I go, man, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what the hell he's doing, but I got to do that. And so I bought a guitar the next week, and I was probably, I'd say I was 20 at the time. Um, and it took probably I probably a year and a half later, I was kind of playing some like, at the time I wasn't even thinking about playing shows or writing songs. I just wanted it inspire me to go learn to play guitar and that's, kind of, became the deal. And then, but just like anything, right? It's like, you do this and then you have another little bitty goal and you have another little bitty goal. And then it led to me playing some cover shows around Athens. And so, still when I just figured it was just going to be a hobby and I moved back to my hometown of Harlem, Georgia after, uh, college and actually stayed and got a master's degree. But I moved home after that. And when I kind of made the decision to go full force at it, or at least give it a try, was I turned down a teaching job, which I was going to be a teacher, football coach. And I turned down that job and I was like, that was the moment for myself where I was like, well, now I have no choice but to go for it. So had a band back home called County Line. We played kind of all over our little area. And then we would go some places too and playing mostly covers, but that's where I kind of started dabbling in songwriting. And that was probably 2000. I would say from like 2011 to like 2013, that time period. And then I just remember, I mean, I kind of, as we may touch on, I had to find a job doing something. And so I sold cars for a while. I mean, just literally followed like a a little newspaper clipping like job openings at this place, and I was like, what am I going to do with this master's in education if I'm not going to teach? Well, I got to do something, if I'm going to be playing music. So I went and got a job selling cars for a while, and then ended up selling gym memberships. Another thing I never thought I would do. And it was there though that I asked myself the question, like I kept going back and forth. I was so intimidated by Nashville because I didn't know a soul, but I knew enough. I had learned enough to know like that probably for, at least for me, staying at home, there's going to be a ceiling there as far as what I could do songwriting wise. And I just, I couldn't get my mind off of it. So, but I was really scared to do it. So for like a year, I was talking myself in and out of, am I going to move? Am I not? Finally, one day I was just like, I have to figure this out. Just, I was praying about it and stuff. And finally I just had the one question I asked myself was, if I was to not go and I woke up in 10 years, would I like always wonder would I forgive myself? And for me, it was like, no, I would like, this would haunt me forever. And so right then I was just like, all right, I don't care how scared I am. I have to go try. So May the 12th, 2014, I moved to Nashville. May the 15th was my birthday. I knew one guy in town. I had met him 3 days before on Twitter because I saw that he was moving the same day and was on the same highway and I was like, so I hit is John Langston. So
Unreal.
Yeah. So I called John. I was like, hey, it's my birthday. Do you, I know we don't really know each other, but I don't know anybody. You want to do something? He's like, yes. So I went over to Bellevue, Tennessee, and it's right across, right west of town to Nashville. We went to Buffalo Wild Wings. And while we're sitting there, he gets this text and was like, dude, we got to go back to the apartment. If you want to come hang, there's somebody staying on my couch. He's here, staying on my couch for the weekend, record some songs. He's moving later this year. So we go back, walk in. The guy on the couch is Luke Combs. So we meet then 3 days after I moved to Nashville. He hadn't even moved to town yet. And like, of course, when we say his name now, you don't picture there ever being a time where somebody didn't know his name. But back then, I mean, we're talking 9 years ago now. So walk in, we kind of hit it off. And the way we hit it off was he's such a huge Eric Church fan too. And so really at first we just became boys, you know what I mean? Like we just became buddies. And so he moved back to town that September of 14, he moved to town. I was one of the first people he called because he didn't really know anybody either. So we just started hanging out and, it really didn't start our friendship writing songs. We just hung for the first couple months and I'll go over there and stuff and we play cover songs back and forth. And, we were just like, man, we should really try writing together. And so we did. And the first song we ever wrote was called Beer Can, made his first album.
Yep.
That was the first song we ever wrote. And so from there, I feel like early on we were like so dumb and so ignorant to like how Nashville worked that we just like we just kind of went off the beaten path and just wrote songs that we really liked, even though that wasn't what was necessarily kind of the thing in Nashville
But it
right
was
now. Those
so
types of
pure,
songs.
right? I think that was
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was the magic there in that first record with
And that,
no rules.
yeah, I think so. I think so. And looking back, I'm like, if we would have kind of known, if we'd have been quote unquote smarter at the time, we probably wouldn't have had the success that we've had together because we would have tried to do things that were already being done. And so by just kind of us just going, hey, let's write some stuff because in our mind, we were like, you know, at the time, there was no reason to think that like, oh, we're going to make it or we're not. At the time, it was just, let's write some songs that we're going to be proud of forever. If in 6 months we end up moving back home, or in a year from now, if it doesn't work, let's at least be proud of what we did do. So, and then it ended up, we all know Luke's story now and where it's still at, but, looking back on that time, it's pretty wild. Like I was just having a conversation with someone actually just yesterday about, it's wild to think that if I move to town a week later, maybe that meeting doesn't happen like it does. And maybe somehow, yeah, I'd like to think we would be, but maybe somewhere we're not as good of like brothers like we are now if we didn't meet in that little time period when he was in town. So
No, I love hearing that, Ray, and I think that bond is such a big part of this because you're talking about y'all met and started writing like literally 3 years later. 2017 was when everything really started happening as far as like Hurricane, then When It Rains It Pours, and it's something funny as a fan, like outside looking in, like it's almost like there's a lot of people that are part of collaborating on this album, but it sounds like it's just as like personal to you as it was to Luke. Like,
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember hearing like When It Rains It Pours. Like, I believe that's your story, right? I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's kind of there was some definitely elements of the time of my life that was going um, that there was definitely some things that were put in there that maybe I was kind of going through at the
Yeah.
time, or something that was in my life that was in the background of that song. And people like from my hometown still ask me like, "Is this about so and so or whatever?"
Yeah.
And it's really not like because I would it's not in the sense that I guess my background at the time and sort of what was going on in sort of my personal life was maybe gave that song sort of the some of the red ass that it needed, for lack of a better word.
Exactly.
But no, it wasn't necessarily about anything in particular. But man, what's crazy about that song is I remember, Luke didn't have a record deal. I didn't have a publishing deal. I think Jordan Walker may have had a publishing deal. I know I can't even remember if he did or not. But I remember we just laughed our way through that, and it started, and you may know this, but it started as Luke had this idea of it being a sad song. Like Luke and I, we love them heartbreak songs now. So that was our first idea of this should rip your heart out. Like when it rains, I pour. When it rains, it pours. Kind of like the whiskey or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And when things in life rain, that's where we were going with it. And then we just it just didn't feel like a day to do that. It just felt and so at some point it was either Jordan or Luke said is there a way we can take the same title and make it just the total opposite of what you think it's going to be, which is what we were doing is what you would think it would be. And so we stewed on that for 30 minutes. And then Luke, I remember, was just doing that kind of G2C thing, just kept playing that over and over. And we couldn't think of any lines or whatever. But then he just out of nowhere was like, what if it's something like Sunday morning, man, she woke up fat mad, bitching him on. And I was like, all right, I don't know where it goes from here, but that's it. That's how it starts. And then from there, we just basically were like, let's give this guy in the song the best 2 weeks of his life. And so that's just what we did. And then we walked out of there
country,
going
right? It's like you take a hook that we believe it's going to be the worst day of your life, and it starts off that way, and then you turn the hook on its head, and it's kind of like Brad Paisley style, where there's some humor thrown into it, but it's almost like fans are listening. They're I want that life. I listen to that song because if I could be experiencing that same kind of day, I'd be the happiest camper out there. And I think that was something that it sounds like y'all almost stumbled on, but there's just something so pure about it, because I know the industry was coming out of a time when it was definitely a little more, still fun songs, but maybe not was as authentic or something that fans be like, this is something I relate to, or a story that I would want to experience, And I think that's something.
Yeah, and it didn't have that Yeah, and we didn't have that. Definitely when that song came out, it didn't have. That was such a '90s track that went with it too. It was such a throwback, and I think at the time, even though it was throwback, it felt super fresh because we were in this era that hadn't had that kind of sound in a little while. But the craziest thing about that song is I remember leaving that day going, this song probably will never see the light of day, but man, we had fun writing it. Maybe Luke cuts it at some point and maybe he goes and gets a record deal, and I hope he does, and that will be awesome. But there was nothing about that song that day that made me go, that's going to change my life forever. Never would have thought.
Dude,
I guarantee you, if you ask those other guys, they'd do the same thing.
I think it's funny too, because in 2016, excuse me, I think on country radio, we kind of knew what we were getting a little bit, and we weren't expecting clever turns of phrase and things like that. And now having a title that means a couple of different things, that's all the rage on country radio.
Right.
And I don't think we really heard that before When It Rains It Pours too.
Sure. Yeah, man. What's wild is I have noticed, that more and more, and that's the kind of, that's the kind of writing that I like to do. I know that Luke likes to do too. And I'm not sure when that started, but I do know that, man, back in 2015, 14, 16, when we were writing all those songs, man, we were trying to hammer that stuff because that's what we want. That's what we love to do is hey, let's find a way to really hook this thing and make it, if it can mean a couple things, like, let's do it, so.
Yeah, man. And I feel like beyond Luke, just there's something about your writing style. Like I've heard on your debut record on Cuts for Other People. I mean, it's almost just, it's very relatable, man. It's like your own personal like
Thank
anecdotes and experiences, but it's like kind of the best of lifestyle. Like Jack and I always talk about lifestyle songs in country, and some of them can be a basic, but you just really excel. Like when you tell personal stories, like even though like I didn't grow up in Georgia, I can still relate to this like a selling cars story. And I think that's something like when we hear like a Riley Green cut you were a part of, Better Than Me, there's still something universal about the stuff you're talking about. It's like an everyman story. I mean, is that because of the way you got to Nashville that you write the way you do? It just seems like you're not writing with like always like, oh, this is going to be the biggest hit out there. You're writing just a personal story, and then it becomes big and takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned a lot. I don't I think that I can go back and can learn a lot from just what we're talking about Luke, and I doing the thing where we just go, hey, let's just be us. And I've seen how far that takes him. And I see how far it's taking him. And I've seen how much people related to that. And so that just has given me just all the kind of the proof I need to really just go, hey, I'm just going to be me. And I'm just going to, and I do, I mean, and when I do write, I am thinking about the listener as well, not just me. Because I do want it to be experiences. The good thing about it is a lot of times when I'm writing from my own experience, I know that out there somewhere, a lot of people have gone through the same thing. And so just trying to find those kind of common experiences that maybe I write my own version of that, like selling cars, but there's so many other people that have dreams, right? And they have their own version of what they were doing before, or even if they're still doing that, everybody dreams. Everybody thinks about, a kind of a what's possible. I think that's part of the beauty of life in general. And so I really try to, and I don't always get it right, but I try to kind of tap into that as much as I can. So.
Absolutely, man. I mean, just talking about the album Spray Painted Line, man, just like I said, I mean, I'm talking personal songs, but you're just telling a number of different stories here. Like you have a song like Selling Cars that's incredibly personal. Then you have like the Battle of Betty's Love, like an Eric Church cut that's like just a story song that, I mean, and it all fits together. But I mean, I definitely am just curious, like you are an artist writer. You have an artist career that you're pursuing right now. And literally Selling Cars, like the line that always hits me the hardest is just, even if this town gets around to breaking my heart, it still beats the hell out of selling cars. And I am just curious, like, hey, like you're in the thick of it. This is the coolest time to be a creator, but it's still a grind. I'm just curious, like how being an artist has been. Like this is an amazing album. And in this day and age, it's like, there's so many ways to consume, but how has the experience been for you putting out your first full-length record?
Man, it's been awesome. I think I'm just so happy that I've gotten the chance to put an album out, because you're not always guaranteed that, even if you sign a record deal. And and let me back up. So when I first moved to town, that's why I moved, is to be an artist. And so it's I've had to remind myself that a lot over time, and to not give up on my own personal dream, because I've so thankful to have the songs that I've had with Luke and Riley and just other people. I'm so thankful for that. At the same time, it would be, because I've seen this happen to a lot of people, where they move to town to be the artist. That's their dream. They have some success songwriting, which is also its own separate dream, right? Because that's a whole separate dream that I came to town with. And it makes a whole lot of sense to go, well, I will just double down on that, right? It's like, the songwriting thing's working, so I'm just going to do that. And it really is really challenging to kind of still like stay the path, because it is such a grind as a new artist. And it is so, and when there is this door open over here to where you go, oh, I can like just do that and have, probably continue to have success. And let's be honest, have an easier life, as far as man, it's a grind being a new artist on the road, and like sometimes you're in the Sprinter
A
van all the
radio
time, and
tour,
like
it's a grind.
the rehearsals and it's a grind. But I choose that grind because it's like, to me, there's something really cool about the hard, and like there's no part of like easy that attracts me. And so even if that's the easy, maybe the easier route or the one that makes most sense to maybe almost everybody, if you asked, man, uh, Ray could just be a writer, and they would go like, man, that would make a lot of sense to do that. And that's fine. And like a lot of people have done that. But for me personally, I've had to stay this course because I truly believe that there's songs with my voice on it that are going to make a difference. And I really believe that there's songs with my voice on it that can move people. And I have my own, my own dreams and aspirations that like, it's almost like wearing two hats, right? In two different roads. And it's like, and really trying to take care of both of those things on the artist side and the writer thing, or the writer side, which is challenging, and it's hard, and it's a grind, but it's one that I choose. And I'm just really excited that, bringing it back to my first album, I wanted my first album to be, 17 songs, right? A lot of people go, well, make it, the first one should be 10 or 12 or whatever. But for me, it was chapters of my life. And every time I tried to take a chapter out, it didn't feel like a book, a complete book. And I know, somebody who's a brand new artist, it's challenging to, we're all talking about analytics and consumption today in today's world and all that. And it is challenging as a new artist to not have that one big hit first before you come out with your first album. And I knew that going in, but for me, it's always, if you want to know who I am as an artist, I can always, now I have the thing out there to go listen to Spray Painted Line, take an hour, and then I feel like you're going to know where this path is going. And so that's what I'm most excited about. And I do love that, and hopefully it is full of songs that are my story, but that also people can grab a hold to, or take them back. And hopefully I've done it kind of in my own way, has been that's been the goal and the aim with that album, and also moving forward. So.
No, man, it's a crazy path, obviously, to just you being you and putting out your own stuff. And you say it in Selling Cars, where like, I think you'd regret it if you didn't give your all to your artist career. So like, it's obviously something to
100%,
be super proud of. You know what I mean? And like,
and the great thing is I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
man.
but the great thing is like, I just get pumped up talking about it, but I'm still like in the middle of it, right? And I'm still, on the front end of it, and so that's just, to me, it's really exciting. But I feel so blessed to be able to even have this opportunity as an artist, and I'm thankful to have a management team, and a label that in a lot of ways they let me kind of, for better or for worse, they let me kind of lead, and let my vision kind of lead, and the type of songs that that I want to cut are the ones that get on the album. And and I'm blessed for that, because, and I'm thankful, and I understand that not everybody gets that in a record deal. And so I'm thankful for that. And so, and it's basically like, if Jonathan and I and Neil, my manager, and Jonathan Singleton, my producer, like, if we're fired up about something, the label is like right there with us. And so I want to tip my cap for that opportunity, because I know that it doesn't go unnoticed to me that that's not always how it is. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, talking about songs you get to choose, I mean, how did we get from you writing a song that Eric Church sang on to you cutting a song that he wrote way back when? Just talk a little bit about the Battle of Betty's Love, and maybe how Does to Me kind of led to that.
Yeah, so Does to Me, we kind of talked some about the Eric Church background. He's my hero. He's kind of Luke's hero. And Luke and I wrote Does to Me with Tyler Reed back in 2016. And, then I think 2018, I get a call, and it's Luke telling me that Eric's going to be on it. At first, I didn't believe it. I was like, quit messing with me, dude. Like, don't do this to me now. And like, he finally got me to believe it. And I was like, honestly, in like happy tears, because it's like, who would have thought, who would ever thought? And so then that song goes number one. And so we're at like an awards thing for our songwriters. And I hadn't got to meet Eric at this point. And he comes over to me, which is, I was like, what's happening right now? I can't breathe, can't move, I don't know what to do with my hands. So he comes up, and and we just have a really cool conversation about the song. And he like basically came over to thank me for like letting him be on the song. And I was just like, well, you got this all wrong, dude. Wait a second. You got it all wrong, man. And like, but I say all that to say that tells you all you need to know about Eric Church. Like, it was just really cool. And so from there, we got to meet. And then as we were kind of in 2020 and early 2021, as we're late 2020, we're kind of thinking about songs to fill out this debut album. I'll tell you this. I don't even know if I've ever said this publicly, but I wake up in the middle of the night at like 4 a.m. and I go, because what we were talking about is there a song out there? Is there an outside song, even if it's outside, that like does that kind of, and we were talking about some song that's outside that like, that I haven't wrote, but that speaks to me and could fill out this record and be like a special place, and this hold a special place. And I woke up at 4 a.m. and I was like, I know he doesn't do this, but why couldn't I just ask to record an Eric Church song? So call my publisher up at Universal. He used to work at Sony where Eric was. And I go, hey, Troy, man, are there some like I'm talking about old Eric Church songs that you think I would dig that I just want to kind of listen through? And he goes, sure, I'll make a call. So I get a few of them and I'm listening to them. And man, that Battle of Betty's Love thing just hit me over the head. It was like, and I just remember going, this is why this guy's the GOAT, because he took this thing we've all done, right? In high school, we've had this like,
both love the girl
thing
with your buddy.
We both love the girl, and it's like your buddies, and then your enemies, and then you're back to being buddies again later when you realize that it wasn't that big of a deal. But the way that he wrote that, almost like the beginning of it sounds like the Gettysburg Address, right?
It's like the Civil War, man. The Civil War between two brothers. Like, it's genius.
And I remember when I got this song, Luke and I listened to this thing 50 times. And Luke's a huge fan of this song too. And I just remember going like, hey, I think I'm gonna ask to cut this song. He goes, dude, absolutely, man. He'll let you cut it. I'm like, are you sure? Because the only people to my knowledge, that have cut Eric Church songs are Eric Church, Terry Clark back in the day, Morgan Wallen, Keith Urban. And I'm like, I don't know if you know those 4 names, but I don't necessarily fit in that category yet. And he's like, dude, just ask. So I called Jonathan and he goes, yeah, man, I'll call and ask. Call me back later that day and goes, dude, he's pumped. He's pumped you want to cut it. He says, absolutely, go cut it. And I was like, what? So, and he wrote the song with John Stone and got his blessing as well. But the song, I mean, we figured out the song was like 17 or 18 years old.
Incredible.
But I mean, I'm talking about like early days in Nashville. And one day I'll let you hear the work tape of Eric doing that song, because I still have it.
It's a timeless.
Yeah, and thank y'all for. I know that y'all spotlighted that song. Thank y'all for doing that, because that's one that I'll cherish forever. And I think that the true like songwriting fans that have listened to my album always go to that one and are like, and actually I don't play it at my show, and not because I wouldn't, but because I sort of love like having that as like the mysterious thing that, will I ever play it? I don't know, but I love it being on the album. I love how we cut it. I love how we recorded it, but I also do love just it having its own like space and time just on that album. Maybe I'll play it out. Maybe I won't. It's
a moment on the record. Maybe with the Chief live. That's something that y'all throw
that's
out
what I
there,
mean.
right?
I just feel like at some point there will be a moment for that. And it's just that song is so special to me that I just wanted to have that thing. So.
Yeah, while we're talking about your show, I know you're going out on tour with Walker Hayes and Ingrid Andress coming up. That's going to be super cool. But we always like to ask this question, like, what would your dream, like, headlining arena tour look like?
I mean, I'd probably just open for church and be fine with that. You know what I mean?
Good enough, honestly.
I mean, it feels like to me, it would just like the most fun thing, right? Would just be get the gang back together. Like I think about this, and Cole Taylor, I'm sure y'all know who Cole is, but he told me this thing back in I think my second day in town, like literally the day before I met Luke. He was like, "Hey," I asked him, I was like, "If you could have any advice for somebody brand new to town, what would it be?" He was like, "Find your crew, man. Like find your people, and like no matter what, y'all rise and fall together. Y'all have each other's back, whatever." And what's wild is Cole ended up being like one of my people, but it would be really cool for me. There's a lot of ways to answer that question, but for me, my dream would just be getting the gang back together and doing one big arena tour, like, me, Luke, Drew Parker, Fair and Rachel's, Cole Taylor, Jordan Rager, like just go down the line, like 10 of us, and we all find a way to like do this tour together, and we call it the 2014 reunion tour. It's like the class of kind of thing. Bring Ward Gunther in there and do, make it a arena whiskey jam.
Ward's the MC
so
of the night,
that
man.
would be
I would love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So make sure he knows that I said that, so we can do that one of these days. So
seriously, it's a lot of bucket list stuff with you, man. Obviously, bucket list beers. I mean, the whole album, the writing, Ray. It's been something that's been special to me just watching outside looking in, because kind of stumbled on you, like I said, just listening to Luke Combs when y'all kind of ushered in a new era in the industry. And now, like I said, this is the coolest time, in my opinion, for creators, for artists, and also just to be a fan. Like, I truly can say, here's a writer that's like written some of my favorite songs in the genre over the past 10 years, and he's dropping a 17-track debut record, and I can just take my time with it, find the songs I truly love, and then like I don't know, man, like I think there's something to be said for fans have more power than they think they do nowadays, and I think it's really cool.
They do.
That artists like you are not afraid to say, I'm putting out my best stuff out there, and I'll always keep on writing, and I'll write even better stuff, but this is the best I have at the time, and y'all just live with it. Like, I think the fact that you weren't afraid of that, it's super inspiring, just like a lot of the lines in your songs. And I mean, I think the last thing we're curious about is kind of like, when it's all said and done, what do you want your career to kind of speak to people about? Like, what do you want to your music to kind of say at the end of the day?
Man, that's a great question. And I think, I think what I hope is that when people look back one day, and we're still kind of in the middle of the journey, but I hope the biggest thing is that people go, man, that dude treated people right, and treated people with grace, no matter what was going on in his own career. And I think that's bigger than any of the song stuff. But I think as far as the music goes, that no matter what was cool or not cool at the time, that I was just authentic to myself and authentic to real life. And sometimes real life sounds a lot different ways. Like, that doesn't mean that every song's got to be serious, but that I, was just really authentic to me. And that my buddy Rob Pennington, he's a songwriter in town, but he says this thing that his dad says all the time, and I love this saying, and I try to remember it. It's kind of during the times where it's not always super easy, like on the artist side or the writer side or whatever, is remain diligent. And I think that remaining diligent and just continuing to dream, no matter if you've caught some of those dreams or not, that I always was continuing to dream and get better. And I hope that at the end of the day, that me as an artist, that there are those 5 or 6 big old hit songs that people can hold on to as well. And if all that stuff happens, man, as Aldean says in one of his songs, I'll be good to go. So
I love it, Ray. I mean, I want to, before we let you go, I do want to make sure like we mention the Pretty Good Ball, your foundation, man, that you got kind of started during the pandemic. I mean, just like everything you've been talking about with the highs and lows of just life in this industry, it's something I thought was really impressive that you took the time to make, and just want to give you a little platform to tell kind of the listeners what it's all about.
Yeah, Pretty Good Ball was something that we started, during 2020. I was the first time that I ever kind of did my own delve down into like therapy, right? And going and talk. And once it's scary when you start. Then once I did, I was like, man, this is something that it's so helpful. I don't want to be quiet about it. And I know us as like country music artists and writers, we're taught, not just country music, but kind of a lot of our backgrounds are kind of that like, you know, you got to, no matter what it is, it's just like, you just got to be tough enough, or like you got to tough through everything or whatever. But what I learned is kind of like, if you got something little going on with your car, right, you take it to the mechanic. And I feel like people are the same way, man. We're all human. It's like, golly, things have happened to all of us in our life that like we don't realize at the time, but affect us later in life. And I think I just wanted to kind of be the person to go, hey, that's all right, that's all right to not be okay all the time, and how I think how powerful and how useful it is, not just therapy, but just like knowing there's fellow people in town that like you could talk to, that we've all been through stuff, and it's okay to not be perfect all the time and to not feel perfect all the time. And I just kind of wanted to use that as a platform to be able to kind of say that, and also at the same time to be an outlet and a place for artists and songwriters, musicians to kind of come to and feel safe with that. And we've done a few different things to raise money also for, if someone's like, man, I would love to do that, but I can't really afford it. Well, we're here to help with some of that too. So
It's incredible, man.
Dude, that is good stuff. And this has been so much fun, honestly. Appreciate you hanging out with us as always, Ray.
absolutely.
And y'all, we want to thank you so much for hanging out with us too. You can hit us up all week long on Instagram at Country Central, on TikTok as well. Check out that camo Country Central hat at countrycentralshop.com. And until next time, we'll catch you real soon with another episode.